Though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. Book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 3. Moses and the burning bush. In brief, passage. The book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 1 through chapter 4, verse 17. Theme: Human inadequacy in the face of God. Setting: 14th to 13th century BC. The foothills of Mount Sinai. Key figures: Moses, a descendant of Jacob through his son Levi, tasked by God with liberating the Israelites. He later becomes one of the greatest prophets. Aaron, Moses' brother, initially more articulate and confident than his brother, he assists Moses in carrying out God's plan. The story of God appearing to Moses as a burning bush illustrates not only his compassion towards his initially reluctant prophet, but also his ability to enact his will through ordinary individuals. Although Moses would become one of the famous figures in the Old Testament by freeing the Israelites from 400 years of slavery in Egypt, at this point in the Bible's narrative he is an outcast. An Israelite raised in Egypt's royal court after an Egyptian princess found him floating in a basket, he fled to Midian, possibly in Sinai, after killing an Egyptian he found feeding a Hebrew slave. In Midian, Moses marries a local woman named Zipporah and becomes a shepherd. It is while he is tending his flock beneath Sinai, the mountain of God, Horeb, the mountain of God, also known as Mount Sinai, that God first speaks to Moses. Spying a bush that is burning without being consumed by the fire, Moses approaches the bush to investigate the phenomenon. When God appears to Moses from within the flames, his first reaction is one of dread. He hides his face, afraid to witness God. God, however, has a mission for Moses. He tells him that he has heard the crying of the Israelites in bondage and that he has chosen Moses to lead his people out of Egypt. The prophet Moses. Moses is one of the greatest figures of the Bible, a leader and lawgiver who is brought up as an Egyptian prince, becomes a social outcast, and ultimately goes on to become a leading prophet. After avoiding Pharaoh's slaughter of the Israelite firstborn sons when his mother hides him in a basket on the Nile, he returns to his people as an adult to lead them out of slavery. After his initial reluctance, Moses not only becomes the liberator of the Israelites, but shepherds them across the desert for 40 years as their spiritual and military leader. A figure of authority and justice, he adopts and enforces God's 10 Commandments. Oh! Uncertain prophet. Moses demonstrates his human frailty by demurring in the face of God's request. He tells God that he is not the right person for the mission, fearing that neither the Israelites nor the Egyptians will listen to his entreaties. Moses further complains that the Israelites will not believe that what God has shown himself to him because he does not know God's personal name. God's patient with Moses, mirroring the intimacy he has previously shown to the individuals he chooses to carry out his will, such as Abraham. He tells Moses, I am who I am, the book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 14, indicating his perpetual omnipresence. To provide further evidence of his almighty nature to both the Israelites and Egyptians, he gives Moses the power to perform 3 miraculous acts. First, when Moses throws the staff, probably a shepherd's crook, to the ground, it becomes a snake. Secondly, when Moses puts his hand into his cloak and then withdraws it, his hand appears leprous and white. When he repeats the action, his hand is restored to health. Third, God tells Moses that if he takes water from the Nile and pours it on the ground, it will turn to blood. In spite of these miracles, Moses remains reluctant. He blames his lack of eloquence, saying, I am slow of speech and tongue. Chapter 4, verse 10. God encourages Moses, telling him that he will be with him and will give him the right words to say. He entreats Moses to leave, but again Moses refuses and pleads, Lord, send somebody else to do it, please. Chapter 4, verse 13. As in many Old Testament stories, the servant God chooses to enact his will is not at first particularly worthy or even willing. Moses' equivocation, indicative of human weakness, contrasts with the strength he later finds when he puts his trust in God. God eventually loses patience with Moses. His anger burns bright against him, yet he also shows his compassion by allowing Moses' brother Aaron, a confident speaker, to assist him on his mission and make up for Moses' shortcomings as a narrator. God tells Moses, I will help both of you speak and teach you what to do. Chapter 4, verse 15. He then gives Moses another staff which to perform miraculous signs. Moses must eventually agree to God's election of him to lead the Israelites because in verse 18 he is preparing to return to Egypt with his wife and sons, taking the staff of God in his hand. Chapter 4, verse 20. The Kenites. Moses is linked through his father-in-law Jethro to a tribe known as the Kenites. This nomadic clan of coppersmiths and metalworkers played a key role in the establishment of ancient Israel. Believed to be descendants of Cain, many members of the tribe settled among the Israelites and influenced their development. Jethro, a shepherd priest, lived in the land of Midian where Yahweh was historically a deity. The Kenite hypothesis, first proposed by 19th-century German theologian Frederick William Gilleny, suggests that the Hebrews adopted the cult of Yahweh from the Midianites who had previously learned it from the Kenites. In the story of the burning bush, when God tells Moses, I am what I am, this is translated from the Hebrew Hayah, which in turn gives rise to the word Yahweh. God's clarification to Moses is a statement of his identity as the God of the patriarchs and thus the God of Israelites. A holy site. The likely location of the episode of the burning bush has been greatly debated by biblical scholars. The Hebrew word for bush, and used in the narrative, is seneh, which is remarkably close to Sinai and may be a pun, a common feature in ancient Hebrew texts. Seneh is also widely believed to be another name for Horeb, God's mountain. The word Horeb is often interpreted as heat, although others translate it to mean desert or desolation, fitting the isolated locations in which God often communicates with his chosen instrument. Although Mount Sinai is widely accepted as the location of the bush, some modern scholars insist that evidence points to other sites, as far away as Hijaz, a region in the northwest of modern Saudi Arabia, or northern Arabia, West Jordan. The monks of the secret monastery of the God-trodden Mount Sinai, also known as St. Catherine's Monastery, are adamant that their complex in a narrow valley at the foot of Mount Sinai in Egypt was built on the site of this mountainous desert, on the site of the building bush. However, while this part of Egypt, which includes mountainous desert, is called the Sinai Peninsula due to this claim, there is little consensus about which mountain is the Mount Sinai of the Bible. The burning bush. Some scholars believe that the inflammable plant Didymus might have inspired the biblical account of Moses' election by God. This flowering shrub, native to warm, open woodland habitats and found throughout the Middle East, is covered in isoprene-based volatile oils that can catch fire easily in hot weather. It is these natural oils that burn, enveloping the exterior of the entire plant and not the bush itself, which is generally unharmed once the flames extinguish themselves. It is possible that this natural phenomenon occurred regularly on the plains of the ancient Holy Land and would have been known to the oral storytellers and early scripture writers who helped shape the Old Testament. Whatever the explanation for the burning bush, it serves as a potent and highly visual symbol of God's omnipresence. In the early books of the Bible, God appears in a number of dramatic forms, known as theophany, underlining his unique ability to appear in different guises and circumstances. The declaratory marvel of the burning bush is juxtaposed with Moses' ambivalent altitude, reflecting the difference between the divine and the human. While God's reputation as the Almighty is emphasized with the spectacle, Moses' uncertainty demonstrates human weakness in the face of the divine. The burning bush is one of the most dramatic symbols in the Bible and has come to represent many different things for religious institutions across the world. The motto adopted by the Reformed Church of France, "Fuego non consumo", I am burned, I am not consumed, best exemplifies the significance that the burning bush has acquired in modern times. God is referred to elsewhere in the Bible as consuming fire, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 24, and Hebrews chapter 12, verse 29. But the fact that the bush remains intact despite the fire can be interpreted as representing God's infinite capacity for mercy. In Scotland, Ireland, Canada, Australia, the Netherlands, and a number of other countries, the bush has become the adopted symbol of Presbyterian churches. In the United States, the Jewish Theological Seminary has adopted the symbol with the accompanying phrase, "and the bush was not consumed." In all cases, the symbolism associated with the image that the church suffers yet lives on. Earth's crowned with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Poet, 1806-61. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Exodus chapter 3, verse 2.